All right, let's talk about net carbs. This is all the rage.
It's a big one too
It is.
when it comes to
So,
the calorie difference.
oh my, this is a major factor for the errors. So net carbs, what the heck are they? They are the total carbohydrates that are listed on the package minus the dietary fiber. And marketers often use this to promote them being like superior and that they just have these great health benefits and oh, they're going to be low in calories and you're going to have good poops and whatever it is. But oftentimes you'll find this in alcohol, high fiber foods, diet products, 0 calorie drinks and sauces that have like the sugar alcohols in them, keto products, protein bars and ice creams, low carb tortillas and breads. And what happens is typically the calories that are listed on the package do not match the actual calorie values.
Because what they want you to believe is that like net carbs don't really matter. You don't have to account for them,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily the case.
Yeah. And so once again, you'll see total calories are lower than the actual macro counts. So who are net carbs for? Well, net carbs still have calories in them. So all calories lives matter. And so when it comes to net carbs, traditionally people who dose insulin utilize net carbs to calculate their insulin dose. So if you don't dose insulin, then it doesn't really apply. And even if you do dose insulin, the total calories still matter.
For weight loss,
For
if
weight
you're looking at overall calorie consumption, like everything matters. It would just be a matter of if you would know how to dose appropriately if you take into consideration the net carbs.
Yeah. And so when it comes to net carbs, how do you account for them? Well, you account for the total carbohydrates that are in the package. So in order to do this, it's important, and we'll cover how to do this in the next slide, but you've got to update your food with the correct calories and to make sure that the carbs are actually accurate. So this is a Mr. Tortilla, protein tortilla. They're big burrito tortillas. They're phenomenal, but their calories are wrong. So on here, their calculations is that it's 170 calories for the whole total tortilla. But what they've done is they have subtracted 51 calories from dietary fiber. And so if we were to calculate this utilizing the macros that are listed, so there's 7 fat, there's 28 carbs, and there's 4 protein. So when we multiply those by the 9, the 4, and the 4, we get a total of 223 calories. And so what happens is if you have a lot of foods that you're consuming with these net carbs, your calories inside of your nutrition tracker, if it's reading the 170 calories, will read lower than what you are putting into your lifestyle tracker. With sugar alcohol, same thing. This happens with like Halo Top ice creams. So their calculation is 60 calories. And what they did was they subtracted 60 calories because they subtracted the amount of calories that come from fiber and the amount of calories that come from sugar alcohol. But when you take the total amount of calories, 18 calories from fat, 52 calories from carbs, 20 calories from protein, you get a total of 90 calories, which obviously is a 30-calorie difference.
So the big thing when you're looking at labels that we want to take a look at in these situations is what is the total number of fat, the total grams of carbs, total protein. Do the math yourself and relate it to the calories to see how it matches, if it's correct, or if you need to make an adjustment.
Yeah. When it comes to tracking alcohol, so
this is almost the opposite.
Yeah.
Way to fuck with you.
Yeah. So the first thing is you have to determine how many calories are in the alcohol itself. And in order to find the total calories, you can try scanning the barcode. You can see if they're listed on the actual thing. Red wine doesn't typically have, or like a lot of like liquors don't necessarily list the actual calories on the label, but if you Google it, then it'll tell you how many calories per X servings. And so then you can obviously figure out the amount of calories based on how much you're drinking. There is also a beer calculator. It's an ABV calculator that's great for approximating beer calories, especially if you are a connoisseur like him who drinks a lot of high percentage alcohol beers.
It's also, I think it's for those things like mainstream, the bigger the brewery, the more they have to account for calories, other things, microbreweries or places like that. They don't have the same requirements, so they can get away with not knowing the calories and putting it out there. So the ABV calculator is great. If you like to have beers that aren't necessarily mainstream, because you can put the ABV in there and get a guesstimate on the amount of calories that are in the beer that you're consuming.
So when it comes to actually tracking the alcohol, um, we typically track it as carbs. And the reason why we track it as carbs is because most people tend to have more carbs than fats. You can track it as fats or do a mixture of the two. Um, but the easiest way is to account for it as carbs. And so what you do is you take your total calories of the alcohol. If you're accounting for it as carbs, you divide it by 4, and then that gives you the total amount of carbs that you are consuming. This is a big one. If you drink alcohol, and you are not tracking it appropriately, it will not show up properly on your lifestyle tracker. You'll be like, oh, I'm not eating enough. It is fact that you probably are eating enough.
Well,
You're just not accounting for it.
especially if you're someone that looks at basically like directly the macros. Like if you're all looking at macros and you have a beer that's advertised as like 4 grams of carbs, it's like, oh, cool. I have 50 grams of carbs or 200 grams of carbs. Like I could drink these all fucking day and be fine.
Yeah.
But the reality is like that's not actually true. And part of the reason we like to put it towards carbs is like the math is also just easier.
Yeah.
Like, taking over our calories divided by 4, that's a little bit easier, at least for me, than dividing by 9. Uh, and like she said, typically that's where more people have more margin, so it's easier to just put it there.
Yeah. How does it affect your lifestyle tracker when you're inputting this? Well, if the calories on the package are lower than what the macros are showing, then your sheet is going to show higher calories because it calculates the appropriate carbs that are on there. So what you can do is you can either create a new food or you can update the food inside of your nutrition tracking app to make sure that it's reflecting the correct amount of calories. The Lose It app that we've been loving is actually nice because it lets you just edit the nutritional label no matter the entry. So that makes it super easy. And then if the calories are correct, but the carbs are not, so for instance, in the case of alcohol, your sheet is going to show less calories that you're consuming because it's missing carbs. And so once again, you can create you can create just a carbs, we'll say food
That's
that
like,
you
yeah,
can
for us,
use
we have
and track.
a carbs or an alcohol entry. So it's like, all right, cool, like single gram of carb for every whatever. And it's just easy to be able to account for it. Because it's like, all right, this is how many drinks, this is how many calories I've had from alcohol. And it's all good.
Yep.